Hi everyone, this is Vincent the Fox, aka Jeffery Wolfe, and I'm putting this in the beginning of the video because it's a bit of a disclaimer. I'm putting it mainly in this part because there was a bit of a technical difficulty trying to get everything from this session in VR. It was actually a two-part thing going on. So it was, the first part was the history of the fandom during that memorial service. The other part of it was actually the memorial service itself. I put that up on YouTube, and it's the raw, unedited part of it. It was a lot. This part was actually 5 hours of unedited video, and I had to edit it down quite a bit because there was a lot. But I do have the raw, unedited part, and I do intend to put that up, but it's going to be as an unlisted, and I want to make sure that I have that up there anyway because it is the raw, unedited part. But there was parts during the memorial service where people were just interrupting, and I did not want to have that in because I did not want that at all. So the other part of what happened, there was a lot of people in that one instance, and their avatars had high poly count or close to high poly count or very high impossible poly count. And so I had to, some of the models, they are just like fallback avatars. That's because even though my computer can handle all of the avatars, my headset down there cannot. And so there's parts in the video where there's glitching audio, and there's even parts of the video where there's like stuttering and stuff. That's because, apart from the fact that there were so many people in the instance and high poly count, it was so much for my headset, and plus with recording for 5 hours, I think eventually it just decided to give up. I did try to add everything that I could because I wanted to at least have the audio, at least, from the from point A, point B, from beginning to end. And so I made sure to get every part of the audio that I could. I even included some of the parts at the end that are more crackly, I guess, and also it's when my headset gave up and it didn't record the last part of what I wanted. Yeah, so I made sure to do the best that I could, and I included as much audio as I could because I wanted to have the audio. But at the end, I was having headset problems. I was panicking because it was a lot for me already what was going on, and that was just me. Anywho, I also wanted to put this in the beginning of the video because I never quite got to put my story about how I technically met Sylys on the Infinity Scroll in the museum that's on VRC. Please go check it out. It's very informative. And so here's basically what happened with me. I officially met Sylys in VRC through a friend that is in this video. I met him, and when I went up to him, I was basically like just overcome with emotions because I really do want to become a fursuit maker at some point, if possible. And he's pretty much this person right in front of me after I watched the fandom, and this is after I watched the fandom with this same friend. I went up to him, and he was basically the reason why, Vincent existed, and he's also the reason why the fandom exists. Or at least he's part of the reason why. And so I basically went up to him and I told him I really wanted to become a fursuit maker and that he basically gave me that life aspiration for making all this happen. I technically met him, and by that I mean I walked by him, didn't even know it was him, at Megaplex of 2023 when I actually got this boy. So I got this boyo, and I was walking around as him, and I see someone walking by, and I didn't even know, but he was wearing ears on his head, and he had like a baseball cap, and he had the mustache. And I see him walking by, and the first thing I said, and it was to myself, was, I wonder whose dad that is. I didn't even know who it was. And that was Mark Merlino, also known as Sylys Sable, who just walked right by, and I didn't even know. And so, the other time that I got to see Sylys was, and this was I believe the last time he was on VRC before things went really bad. So I joined off of everyone because it was a movie night and I wanted to see what the movie night was about. I didn't have anything else going on, and everyone else was kind of not home or busy doing things. And so I joined off and went into the movie night with them, and it was a Christmas movie. It was pretty much the last time that he was in VR, and when he was, like the last time he got on, or he was on there, he said he wasn't feeling well. And I didn't know how bad it was until I heard about like a month later in January. I had only known him for 3 months, and technically I would have known him even longer had I known. But it was definitely a lot because I considered him a friend, even though I didn't really know him that well. And so, anywho, this is not about me. I hope that you enjoy the video. At the very least, I hope that I did well enough with the editing. I haven't really done editing that much in a while. I haven't done much with video production in a while. I really hope that I did at least good enough. And without further ado, this is the memorial service for Sylys Sable.
Yep.
We might as well get started.
Have our attention, friendo.
No, I'm here. It's a very laggy map right now.
I don't even know how to begin this. So I first met Sylys standing kind of right here. Kind of in this spot. And he had gone through and seen most of the museum already and was almost completely finished. That display that display right there took up this entire wall. It was from the Polish artist, I haven't been here in a while. Ferret Studios. Yeah, that display took up this whole wall, and Sylys had been arguing with me about getting historical art in here. Historical furry art. Of course, the main purpose of the museum is contemporary art, not history. And I for half an hour, he was very adamant about insisting that historical furry art be represented. Something snapped in my mind after that, and I realized here I have the man who made the fandom, the man who directed the conference, the very first furry convention, who also directed the very first anime fan club, co-founder, and he actually kept the videotapes of the very first anime fan club. He was responsible for if people were going to check those videotapes out. He was essentially the librarian, the very first anime librarian you can imagine in America. And yeah, I something snapped in my mind. I said, who am I to say no? Who am I to say no to this man? So I told him, all right, you got a table. And this is that table. I didn't have a lot of room to put a lot of art. I didn't know what I was going to do. There's not that much physical room here compared to a lot of the other exhibits in the museum. But there's tons and tons of art. Not only that, but the world size was massive, and it didn't make sense to put in tons of full-colored art. I just didn't know what I could do. And then he showed me the conference archives. Most of the pieces on this table were taken from the conference archives,
yeah, that's a lot of
which
people.
Chenka Husky came in. Oh, nice.
That's a
Yes.
lot of people in here.
Chenka Husky actually scanned in all these documents himself because there were some people apparently saying the furry fandom used to be safe for work and it used to be free of adult stuff, and then other people came in and ruined it. And that wasn't the case at all. So Chenka had scanned in virtually every document that they had, including personal letters that people had sent to Sylys, and I'm going to go through a lot of that right now. When I saw that all these pieces were Xeroxed in. Xerox only has one color, black, and the color of the page. I figured out a way that I can get a shader where we can see all the fine line work and detail that was drawn, and some incredible details in the paper and the page as well. But this is only using one channel of 4 channels in a texture for the same space of a single color image in the museum, like that piece over there. I can get 4 pieces on this table. So there's only 6 textures for everything that you see here. Well, I think around 7 or 8 now that we added a few more pieces.
Are these the pieces that were first submitted by him?
He actually didn't really submit pieces per se, although he did still show me a lot of things. Most of what I looked through was I was looking for things that were historically significant, things that really showed and explained different facets of the fandom and how we got from that initial start to where we are today. So a good example of that is actually this right here, which I consider to be the most important piece on here, but that's just me personally, the Conference Zero discussion groups. Sylys told me he actually forgot, like he didn't even remember that he had this on the archive. But on the back of this page is every single discussion group that was had at the very first furry convention. They only had 60 people, so it wasn't really a panel, it was more like a table. And someone sat at the head of the table leading the discussion, but these were all the different discussions that were discussed that day. Everything that was had. Sylys didn't even remember that he had this piece. He didn't even remember that this was here, and he was astonished I was able to find it. Some of the pieces that he submitted to me included this right here of the very first persona, Ken's cougar, drawn by Ken Sample. Some of the other pieces he submitted, this map of Furry Muck by William Haas, one of the architects of Furry Muck.
Am I right in thinking Sylys has a street on there?
Well,
He
yeah,
does.
Sylys
He
does
does,
have
actually.
a street named after him. Going down here, and at the end of Furry Muck would be a statue of Sylys himself, as well as his Lantana store. Because a little known fact about Sylys, he did he did own a speaker company, and he did manufacture and make his own speakers, and sold them. So that is a reference to that right there. Everything else on this table was found on the conference archives, and it explains the whole history of the fandom from when it began to where it is right now. When it was finally finished, Sylys said there were 2 places on Earth where you can go and learn the history of the fandom.
I'm back.
The fandom documentary by Ash Coyote, which I highly recommend all of you watch, and this museum. Sylys would come in here, and yeah, he would come in here and he would give his own history presentation. He would talk with people and share stories about various things throughout the making of the fandom. I guess that's enough background. This is... I've never given a presentation like this. Usually he would be standing right there next to me while I give this presentation, and then correcting everything that I got wrong. It's like the worst test you ever had in
He was
school.
good for doing that.
You don't just have the teacher in there, you have the people who invented the thing there. Like, you can't get anything wrong. He will correct you.
It's like, Solo, I remember one time... I remember one time he was there when you were presenting to a group, and he was just like, actually, this is what happened. He would correct you every time you got something slightly wrong.
The more you ran through it, though, Solo, the more it was additive, more than it was corrective, though.
Yep.
I tried. I just want everyone to know I try the best that I can to make sure that the history is accurate and it's right. But of course, he was there for all of it, so he knows it because it's all his memories. Losing him means we lost that resource, and I also lost my friend.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
all we can do now is retell the stories as best as we can. And I feel he's entrusted me to do just like Ash Coyote, to retell those stories to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And we thank you for it.
He'll be smiling down on you right now for doing this. You know that. You know he would, Solo.
I feel like he's already yelling at me to get on with it.
He probably is. He's like, oh, come on, keep going. He's probably going, stop sobbing and keep going. You know what to do.
Alright.
He's probably saying that.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I'll keep going.
let's carry on.
So,
Show must go on.
Yeah.
something that Sylys always told me prevented him from relating to other people was not his age. He was born in 1952 to 2 loving parents. And even though their son was a little different, he was bisexual. He was actually growing up in a Catholic school. He was still loved by his family very much. He was actually in an open poly relationship with 2 African American males, as well as Rodney. One of those is Ken Sample. If he was here, he'd tell me who the other people are, because I don't remember everyone's names, unfortunately. Changa also knows, but he was a very open and loving person.
The soundtrack in here.
And he loved everyone, and he loved the fandom. By the way, you guys, there is someone special coming in. Please don't freak out.
Yeah.
So, the one thing that kept him from relating to other people, there's so many people who come into the LGBTQ community who have trouble expressing themselves, and they have trouble having a family, being accepted by others. They were accepted here in this fandom. And
You're fine, Doc.
Sylys told me when he was making the documentary with Ash Coyote.
Hey, bro, if you guys need to talk,
While
do
they
it
were making the
out of this
documentary,
world, okay? We're
Ash
kind of
Coyote turned to them and said,
important.
"Thank you so much for making such a safe space for the LGBTQ community." Well, Sylys and Rod turned and looked at each other, and he said, "We did what now?" They never intended. They never intended.
Typical. Memoranding again.
They never intended this community to be just for the LGBTQ community. It was only ever supposed to be a place for people who love animal characters and the art of animal characters and the fans of cartoons and animation and everywhere furries could be.
I think it's the
But,
fact that that was the only real criteria to be considered part of it, and that's what made it such a welcoming community. And he was a very nice and welcoming person.
Thank you, Sam.
They
Not
wanted
everyone
an
in the
open
early
and
fandom.
inclusive community.
Not everyone in the fandom is as open and inclusive as he is, and not everyone is as open and inclusive outside of our fandom as he was.
Yeah.
But he loved it all. If you look on the conference archives, you will see thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of documents, letters, con books, and every single page of those con books, APA fanzines, and every single page of those fanzines, front and back. You will find letters that people had personally written to Sylys in order to come into the furry conventions. You will see the entire directories of all the furries. Well, not the entire directories. You will see the front page and maybe a few other pages, but not the names of the people who are in it. They deliberately left those out. But you will also find entire lists of everything that the CFO watched as part of their daily screenings. The anime became so popular because that was something that was not being shown anywhere else. Sylys and the man who was responsible for recording all of those programs that the CFO saw back in 1977 was recorded by this man, Wendell Washer. At the time, this is 1975, this letter. This is before furry was even a thing, before the anime fandom was even a thing, even before the conference, and before the CFO, the Cartoon and Fantasy Organization. Sylys just sent letters and communicated with people who were responsible for making shows that he loved. And he absolutely loved Wendell Washer's work and found friendship through him, talking about cartooning and animals in cartoons. Oh God, it's been a while since I read this letter. I will give it a shot. Dear Mark. Oh, and also, before I continue, unfortunately, both of the people in this letter now have passed. So Wendell Washer passed, I believe, in 2018, and Sylys passed just yesterday. Dear Mark, enclosed are Xerox copies of the 2 articles by Phil Babbitt on violence and animated cartoons, as they appeared in the latest issues of the Cartoonist Union worksheet, the pegboard. News sheet, the pegboard. We've talked a lot about violence in animation and the effect the parents groups are having. I pretty much agree with what Phil says in his article. Thanks a lot for showing me the cell you did of Jessica Rabbit. It's beautiful, and I'm glad to know that someone else, or that somebody likes that cartooning style besides myself. Hope you weren't upset by my housewife last Sunday. I like to stay. Oh God, I don't know what that word is. I like to stay guffy and loaf around the house every so often. I'm interested in meeting that guy whose house you went to me sometime. Maybe sometime we could get together. Your friend Wendell. 2 years after this letter was written, the Cartoon Fantasy Organization was formed, along with Fred Patton and several others. And they would form what would actually become the very first anime fan club in America. At the time, this is usually the part where I ask people, so, the very first anime fan club in America, what did they watch? Did they watch sub or dub? What was most of what they watched? And I'm sure most of you have actually seen this presentation before. You can go ahead and shout the answer.
Sub?
You can shout the answer.
It's
Neither.
It's nothing
No,
but
neither.
No.
Neither.
Neither.
Just kidding.
Neither.
No Japanese.
Neither.
They watched original Japanese.
There was
Japanese, 'cause
no.
they didn't have any.
There was no westernization of anime at all. Anything Japan was doing, they were doing it for Japanese audiences.
Wow.
There were
Yep.
Japanese stations that aired in America where they showed it, but it wasn't found anywhere else. So Wendell Washer had a tape recorder. This is one of those things Sylys would have corrected me on. It wasn't a VHS recorder. It was something else. I'm not
Record
entirely
tube?
sure what. It was a Sony some Neo 1600
Betamax?
I think it
It
predates
wasn't
Betamax.
Betamax. It was something
Oh,
else.
probably before it.
Predated
It's,
Betamax, and I can't remember
wait.
the format.
The first ones were reel to reel.
Okay,
The
regardless.
first consumer ones.
It was.
Anyway.
Technically,
carry
it
on.
was a VHS tape recorder, and he recorded anime on those tapes. There was no other way to watch anime. There was no other way to distribute it. There was no other way to do it unless you were just tuning into a Japanese TV station and saw it when it was aired. The group ended up building a library of all those anime tapes, and this is why I was really hoping we would have more anime people in the crowd today. Sylys was. He raised the anime fandom. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have anime in America. What would the crowd be for it? People in Japan didn't even think that anyone in America knew what anime was. They didn't even consider that there could be a market for it here. Here's on this directory multiple chapters of the CFO all over America. And multiple chapters had their own screenings, their own showings. And most of those screenings and showings was just Japanese. There wasn't many translations. Sylys told me that when they did try to get people to come in and translate, the speech was very, very like it was the speech of young people. It was
I'll stream.
slang. It was the kind of thing that people weren't familiar with, who had learned Japanese from many years prior. So there were some people who knew Japanese and couldn't understand what people were saying. And then they did actually get proper translations, and there were some people in the group who actually didn't really like the translations as much. That original crowd was full of people who were actually professionals. They were really impressed with how the animation was done, because they had the same limits, the same short budgets, the same short time as people in the West. but the quality of anime was a lot different, and it was a lot more interesting, a lot more detailed than what we were doing here in West. A lot of the groups really took a liking to that, and they believe that film was a universal language. So they didn't care too much about not having a Japanese translation. They were really truly fans of the anime as it was originally presented. Because they had no other choice, too. The CFO would then host video screenings among many different conventions, but this was before furry conventions, and this was before most other kinds of conventions. The conventions that they went to were science fiction. And you would think this would be, science fiction movies and TV shows. Well, there were some science fiction movies and TV shows, but the big draw to these conventions was literature. The CFO had video screenings of the anime, and that's how the anime fandom got its start. A lot of people flocked to these conventions to see the anime and watch the video screenings that they would air. Again, there was no other way you couldn't run to Target and buy a DVD and get anime and show it. You couldn't stream it off Crunchyroll, that's for sure. There was no YouTube back then. There was no TV. Well, no, there was TV. Hang on. There was TV. There was no internet back then. They had TV. They had electricity. They also had cars. And they had wheels. So, they didn't have internet. The
antenna or cable back in
crowds
it was
for
antenna
anime.
and cable.
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and just cover anime through to the end. The anime crowd got so big that people who originally attended for the science fiction convention, for the science fiction aspect of it, felt that they were getting pushed out. And so eventually they started to spread community. But hang on, I'll go through the anime first, and I'll come back and circle back with the furry stuff. But I want to, because I think I've already talked a lot about the furry stuff, but this man's responsible for the very first anime fan club. We need to cover that too. This is the chairman's letter from Angela Jones for BayCon 1988. This was okay. I need to recollect my thoughts a little bit.
You're fine.
It's okay.
Take the time
A lot of people had,
Take your time,
a lot of people had spread. Thank you. A lot of people had spread rumors that the anime fandom was no longer going to be accepted, and it would be cut out of all the programs in BayCon. So the Angela Jones kind of corrected some of those remarks, and she said, no, the anime fandom is welcome here, but it was too late. This letter came out after the rumors had already spread to individuals attending the convention. This letter was made after that convention finished. So a lot of people in the anime fandom, which again, inspired by Sylys and all of the videotapes that he was responsible for being the librarian, as part of the CFO, responsible for recording and gathering and bringing people together and hosting meetings to watch this stuff. Those people the people who loved anime got together and decided to have their own convention. And that's when Sylys turned to Rod and said, if they're going to have their convention, we're going to have ours. So we wouldn't be the anime in America would not be here if it wasn't for the work of Sylys and the CFO and Wendell Washer, who recorded all those tapes. That does get lost in the fog a lot of times. And to really understand how Japan realized that animation was popular. Well, there was an animation director that came here, and I'm afraid I am going to have to read because I forgot the name sometimes. Osamu Tezuka, who created Phoenix 2772. They already had a scheduled a program that they were going to show, but now I heard from different people. This is something Sylys didn't tell me himself. I heard from different people. He was going around to different people and telling them, hey, come to the video screening. There's going to be something amazing showing there, and make sure you cheer loudly. And then he also told the director to go there and see the video screening. But he wanted to see other things. He didn't really care too much about seeing the movies and whatever they were showing. He saw that what they were showing on the pamphlet, wasn't very interested. And then, to everyone's surprise, Sylys switched out the tape and showed Phoenix 2772, the film that the director actually made and who was in the audience. According to Sylys, he was looking at his pamphlet. As soon as the movie started playing, he just looked up, and the whole crowd erupted in cheers.
Wow,
And
I've never seen it.
Tezuka's jaw just dropped. And that was really one of the first times that people in Japan understood just how popular anime was getting in America. And from that moment forward, they started westernizing their anime. They started making anime specifically for us, knowing that we have certain tastes that are a little bit different than the taste in Japan, and we started building a huge market here. I can't believe we haven't even gotten into the furry stuff yet. And already it seems like he's accomplished so much. We'll be here all day if we don't move on. So, heading back, let's go back to this convention. LostCon 7 has a very special place in Sylys's heart, because this was actually the convention where he met Rodney. If any of you know Rodney, you might know him as Vincent Mink. He comes in VR chat every so often, not very often. I would like him to be here more often, but he would come in here with Sylys.
He's a splendid fellow.
And they would... I'm sorry, it's just I'm telling stories of someone. It comes in waves. I'm reminded that
Just take
Sylys
the
is
time
no
you need,
longer
buddy.
with us.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay.
So I remember the first time I met the both of them.
Some heavy stuff.
Ironically, it was the first time they were viewing the fandom in VR chat. I joined on a friend. I sit on the seat, right? I sit on the sofa.
Got it?
Didn't even realise it was them. And then when it came to a certain part of the video, all I hear from Sylys is bullshit. That's the first thing he said that one part of the video. And I'm like, wait, Sylys? He's like, yes. Is that you on the screen? He's like, yes. Ah, shit, hi. And he friended me there and then. So it's like, oh, hello.
So,
great.
yes, if you guys haven't watched the Phantom documentary, that covers that covers the history very well.
Oh, yes. Take a drink, Solo. You've been talking a while. Go get CP sips.
We'll pretend it's vodka. I am such a fan.
Was it his favorite drink?
I just took a
Well,
nice big
I
sip
didn't
of
drink.
vodka. Very cold vodka. Yes. From my vodka bottle.
Hello.
Um, okay. Sylys and Rod first met at this convention, and he told me he was surprised by Rod because Rod loved his art and loved his drawings. A lot of furries were going to these conventions, and they were in the art show, selling art. But there wasn't a name for it. The word furry didn't even exist yet. They had just gone in. They really liked characters that weren't humans. They were more animal creations, and they made and sold everything. And he met Rod, and Rod came up and was the very first one who came up and said, "Oh wow, those are really cool Martins." And of course, a lot of people who saw Sylys's characters said, "Oh, that's a weird-looking dog. We hear more often." Suburb, and of course, a lot of and that there were other species, and people who saw Sylys's character. So they quickly became very good friends, and then eventually become mates, and eventually they would co-direct the very first furry convention together. 750 membership for a convention. Can we go back to that? It's only 750.
Dang.
So, yeah.
Back in those days?
Midwest was what, 200?
At those conventions, Sylys would host his own room parties, invite furries to join and gather and
Tucker was here
see
for
some of the
a second.
animal
I
art.
don't know where he went.
They would play games. They would draw and share, and if there was any interesting comics or any interesting media anyone found, they would share it together at the parties. At this time, it was just science fiction conventions and room parties. I really love this right here, furry fans. This is also the point where Sylys would correct me and tell me exactly where the word furry came from. It was a mate that was staying at his house at the Prancing Skill Tear, who had seen all of the art that they were doing, everything they were gathering, everything that they loved doing, and he said, "Oh, you're furry fans." And yeah, a lot of the characters had fur. A lot of them did. Sorry.
All right.
We can forgive you.
So, a lot of people gathered in the room parties. Then the CFO formed, of course, and then people were trying to find as much animation that they could that wasn't really being shared in the West. But the thing that really took off was the anime. Obviously, Sylys was still looking for animal media anywhere he could find it, any country he could find it. Because in America, a lot of animal media was really limited to children, so it wasn't as interesting as some of the things he'd seen in Japan. That most of the animation was being marketed for kids, unfortunately. Initially, the goal for Looney Tunes was to market to adults. A lot of adults were going to movie theaters and watching film noirs, and before the movie would play, they would air short films like Looney Tunes. That's what it was intended for. But a lot of the cartoons in that days, once it moved to television, started targeting children. And that's kind of where it stayed in that ghetto. Around the same time as
Okay, buddy, breathe.
Voodoo happened around the same time as the CFO, and a lot of the artwork of the furry fandom was found in here. I actually just recently came across the cover of the very first Voodoo issue ever made, and it says right on the cover, the Funny Animal Fandom. It was really made for furries. It was made for us. But a lot of the artists featured weren't necessarily drawing furry comics. It was more professional comic creators doing underground things that they couldn't do in their day job. That art was shared. People would submit art to Voodoo. It would get reprinted. And I have a few of those right here. The artwork would be submitted, and once it got submitted, you pretty much didn't. Good luck getting it back. You mailed it in to Tom Foster or Stefan, and they would print it and collate all the art that they gathered and Xerox copies these to their members. There were only a maximum of 60 members at any point in time. They only made 60 copies of each of these fanzines. They were mailed out once a month, and people would be waiting for the next month's issue to get their daily dose of furry fixings. Imagine if you wanted to get some commentary on some art that you drew, and the person didn't live next door, and they didn't live in your city, and there wasn't a meeting you could go to and find those people. Well, you kind of submit your art to these guys. They would put it together in a fanzine, and then it would come in an issue at the end of the month. And then people would write letters to the editors and include writing letters and commentary about the art that was featured. So people would see their comments maybe a month after that month's issue. So maybe about 2 months from the time that they submit their works, they would get comments back. And from what I heard, there actually was some people who'd had a little flame war that extended. I can't imagine how that happened month after month after month. One comment after one comment after one comment. It seems a little.
Never changed.
It was more of a slow burn back then.
It was just a lot slower.
Surely
back
at
then.
some point they had a lot of breathing room in between to take a breather.
You okay?
Touch
Think
grass.
about it.
That's good.
But yeah, that's how the early art of the fandom was shared. You had to, if you weren't in the room with somebody, you had to give it to someone because the internet wasn't a thing. Here's also, I'd like to mention some other art also in Voodoo, just to give you more of a selection, more of an idea of what kind of stuff you could find in there. Some of these styles look very much like early furry styles that are very obviously furry, and we still see their influence today. Now, some people said from these zines that the furry really got to start with Rauerbrazel. Now, Voodoo, even though the first cover said and welcomed the Funny Animal fandom, a lot of the art that was in it was not necessarily furry. There was a lot of adult film noir kind of content. It was not necessarily furry art always. It was also just weird and random things. It was just an underground comic book. But Rauerbrazel was made specifically with the intention of being a furry APA fanzine. So I can understand where some people get the notion that this was the. Some people consider this to be the moment that the fandom really came into its own. Rauerbrazel got its start in 1983, and the first furry convention would still be 6 years later. So it was before the first convention that we had these two. On the left, the very first persona. On the right, the very first fursuit. Sylys told me the stories, how the very early fandom was mostly about drawing animal characters. They loved animal characters, and they loved drawing animal characters, and the people that he gathered were people in the industry who drew them, and the fans of their works and their shows. It wasn't necessarily an identity thing. People were furry fans. They were fans of furry content. They weren't furries themselves. But then Ken Sample drew a picture of a cougar and gave the cougar a lot of similar physique and attributes and hairstyle to himself, including his glasses. Now, this is not the first drawing of Ken Cougar that was ever made. He did make Ken Cougar, I believe, 1987 or prior. So that there's drawings that predate this by 2 years. I just chose this one because the earliest one that I found that was just his character in a very good pose. But yes, the very first persona does predate the first convention by a couple years. But since this happened, the fandom really erupted. Everyone had to have a furry of their own, and everyone they stopped calling themselves furry fans and started calling themselves furries. On the right, we have Robert Hill, portraying Hilda the Bambioid, a character made by Jerry Collins, who also drew this. So perhaps maybe I should show both. So Jerry Collins, unfortunately, I don't have quite too much information about Jerry Collins, other than he goes by a different name now, Georgie. And you can actually find some of his work on DeviantArt. And he's made thousands and thousands of pieces, and they're kind of rather interestingly colored compared to what he did in these days, which is mostly black and white inks and comic pages. But Hilda the Bambioid is a character that he made. The Bambioid were a species of very strong female warriors, and this is a picture of Robert Hill in his costume of Hilda, which not too many furries did. There wasn't really a process defined. There wasn't a process defined for making something like this. We didn't have an entire. Now you go to a furry convention, there will be panels and tons of people you can go and talk to about how to make a fursuit, including websites and content. Back then, these were the guys. These guys were just making stuff on their own and doing whatever they wanted to do, and there wasn't any real formula to follow. He actually constructed this fursuit, the fursuit head, the same way that Disney constructed their mascot costumes. So I don't think many of you know this. So don't shout it out if you truly, genuinely know. And I told you. But how many of you know what this head was made out of? The structure of it. What was the head made out of? I know you know, Deller. I know you know.
None of these seem so random.
Take a guess. Shout it out. Come on. Tell me.
Styrofoam?
I'm keeping quiet.
PVC.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Blaster.
say
Wax.
Looks
Styrofoam?
like fiberglass, kind of.
Okay.
It was a wax plaster
It was
mix. if I remember
fiberglass.
Fiberglass.
It was
Clay?
Ooh.
Fiberglass. Yes. It was very heavy. It was very hot. You couldn't really breathe through
I know who
fiberglass.
the characters belong to.
It was one of the really breathe through fiber.
The person that does those crazy modeling things.
Thankfully, over time, fursuit making did change. This Sylys mentioned that once foam got involved, that's when you started seeing more of the more for less style. First, the sculpted and carved shapes and forms, more of the toony thighs, more of the different proportions. Before that, it was just very difficult to find a material that would hold the structure very well and be pliable and easy to use. So Robert Hill, you can be a full-fledged furry too. There were some people, again, a lot of people were in the industry, and a lot of people had different skills. And one of those skills was makeup body paints. So people would paint tiger stripes, and they would become, those animal characters and play that out. This was before we had the costumes, though. I mean, a costume is a lot easier. You don't have to take that long to put it on, and then you can take it off. It would take a while, though, for the costume to get to where they are today. So Mark and Rodney, Sylys and Vincent Mink, and Ken Sample and several others would gather together with only 5 people, just like the CFO, and plan out the very first furry convention. Now, this is the part that unfortunately I didn't write down here, but I actually have a quote that Sylys made, and I have it on my computer. If you let me pull it up. This is 1989. They're planning this in 1988, so that for a convention that's going to happen in January 1989.
That's 2 months before
The World Wide Web wouldn't. The World Wide Web wouldn't happen yet. People didn't have internet yet. You couldn't just. You couldn't just go on a server and be like, "Oh, hey everyone, come to this. We have an event going," and then everyone comes in. Just imagine for us to be here today. I'm sure all of you found out through the internet somehow. Imagine if we didn't have that. Imagine if I needed to. Imagine if I needed to know. Every single one of you guys and your phone numbers and your address. In order to find a way to contact you. We wouldn't be able to do this. I needed physically a way to get to you. And that's where the directory became so useful and so handy. Everyone that had ever been to the CFO who had certain tags under furries and animals would be in here. And so they scoured the directory. They sent letters to everyone, postcards. Let me go ahead and find that quote from Sylys, and I'll read it to you right now. No, I have it pulled up right here.
Definitely.
Okay. The first thing we did to publicize conference was mail around 1,000 postcards using the fandom directory mailing list for animation, comics, and funny animal tags. It explained the idea for a furry con and offered a discount membership for $10 and a supporting $5 upgradable membership. Rod remembers a doctor that sent $5 with a note saying he couldn't attend, but thought it was a good idea. they'd sent those postcards, 1,000 postcards, to everyone to explain what a furry convention was in order to advertise it. Guys, that's a lot of postcards to mail.
It's a good way. It's a good way to get carpal tunnel too. Writing them all.
If you distribute the work evenly to 5 people, that's 200 postcards each. Just writing the names and addresses of all those and putting stamps on all those and mailing it would have been a lot of work.
Well, yeah,
But
since
that's
you'd
not
probably
all
have
that
to
they
go.
did.
Were
They
they
also had to.
were they all handwritten or were they typed? Because if they were typed,
fairly
that does make it
certain-
different because of carbon copying.
I mean,
I
I'm
bet they
fairly
were
certain
I'm
that they
fairly-
copied
I'm
it.
fairly
I
certain
can't
they were
imagine that they
handwritten.
wrote these. But
Yeah.
there were a lot of
That's
letters
very
that were handwritten to various members, and there were people who wrote letters to Sylys. I mean, that's jumping a little bit ahead, but if you're curious, how many of you guys know who this person is?
Turtle, the bunny. From the turtles.
Ow! This is
No,
Soggy
but how-
Jimbo.
if you, like, kind of stand
Yeah, drawn by Stan Sakai.
I can't see it from here.
So, this is actually a Xerox copy of
Down in
Stan's
front.
work, and on the back, a letter to Sylys, asking to attend conference. Josh Quagmire gave me one of your flyers for Conference 1 and suggested I attend. I've currently got the flu, which is causing me to fall behind in my work schedule. However, if I've caught up with my deadlines, I do plan to be there. As a comic book professional, Usagi Yojimbo, Nilson Ground Thumper, Guru the Wanderer, and TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, would I be able to reserve a complimentary membership? Best Stan Sakai, address redacted, Pasadena, California, phone number redacted. If you have any special programs or activities, let me know. So yes, there were some handwritten letters that were going back and forth in order to get people to attend the convention. Out of 1,000 postcards sent, 90 people wrote back and said they would attend. However, only 60 people showed up. But from that crowd of 60 people, we got the very first furry convention. We got the tables, which, if you look at the program, pretty much any furry convention that you go to these days is going to have these topics on there. Splitting it up by species: canines, felines, mustelids, ungulates, reptiles and avians. And dragons are reptiles, by the way. So yeah, you jerks in the audience we're in the reptile group. And there's all sorts of different conversations about art and creating furries and the media surrounding it. This really is our fandom in a nutshell. It's our fandom in a snapshot. There were other things that happened at a conference that Sylys told me. A lot of interesting things, actually. The very God, it's kind of it's just like a gushing at me right now. I don't know where to start or where to end.
Just do your best.
Yes. I'll try. Something that he mentioned was at the science fiction conventions, people would go and cosplay, and that there was a video of like a Spider-Man cosplay on there. So there was, even though it was quote unquote science fiction, it was they would put them
Take
on a
another
big
sippy
stage.
sippy.
They would shine very bright lights in a dark room on the costumes. People would walk up on stage and it would just glare in everyone's eyes. I mean, everyone had glasses, and I guess not everyone had the cleanest glasses, and it was. They were trying to make it like a big production, and it wasn't. So, with only 60 people, you can't even do something like that, anyways. People were just showing each other the stuff that they made, the costumes that they made, the things that they painted, the designs. They were just showing off what they were doing to everyone. Effectively, what I heard several times, and I really hope to hear a little bit from Durin and Deller as well about the conference. It was just like a furry room party, but bigger. Is that true?
I was never there, unfortunately.
Oh no! I thought you said. Was there
I
anyone
I
in the
go back
room
to
who had attended
'96.
conference? 96?
Yeah.
Does anyone go back before 96? Durin! Durin!
Fix my height.
Yes.
All I can really say is that I got into furry 1992 through Furry Muck. You showed the picture that Ashtoreth had drawn, William Haas had drawn of the muck. And yeah, I actually went. I went on Furry Muck today and went to Size Statue for about 30 minutes. It is it's on Sable Street, which is north of the park, and the park is the center of the muck. But on topic, conference. So my first conference was Conference 6, which occurred in January of 1995. And that was the first time that I met Mark Merlino. And yeah, I mean, it would be a lie to say that the first furry conventions were the organized affairs that you see today. I would say the entire time that conference was run, all the way up through conference 10 under Sylys, and then well, I think Sylys's last was 9, and then 10 and 11 were run by another person. It was Wintle.
I see Eddie's.
And then conference kind of ended at that point.
Yeah.
But other conventions had sprung up to take its place. Conference was not
He was
the
there,
best. Well,
Hey, Sonic.
yeah, okay.
You directed
Conference was not the best well-run convention by any means. But then again, you have to realize it was the first. And Mark and Rodney were treading new ground in putting together these conventions. And yeah, it really had the feel at the start of being a giant room party that just kept getting bigger and bigger every year. And even in 1995, the fursuits were not of the quality that you would see today, but they were very impressive for the materials and the time that people were putting into them then. They had instead of a fursuit parade, it was a lot smaller. They had something called a masquerade, which was basically it was similar to the coming out on stage, but they knew by then they couldn't do it in a dark room with spotlights. It was brightly lit so that people would not fall off the stage. And you know it was taking place in Los Angeles. You know, in the stomping grounds near the Prancing Skill Tear, which is in Garden Grove. And so not far from Disneyland. A lot of people who would go to conference would also pair it with a trip to Disneyland on the same weekend.
Nice.
Wow.
So there were.
Thank you.
If I can talk a little more about the earlier conferences before we move ahead. early on, I'm just trying to explain where some of the exaggerations and misconceptions may have originated. Some of the biggest controversies at conference was Sylys kissed Rod in the hotel lobby, which nowadays we wouldn't see that as being the most controversial thing you could ever do.
Back in those
but
days.
this was back in those days. This was 1989. People weren't quite as open and accepting of the LGBT community. And the people who caused the most problems and raised the most alarm were ironically people who were gay and bi and part of the community. So it was only a few small people in a few small forums who would get together and absolutely lambast Sylys, as well as Robert Hill, because the female pinup stuff was fun and it was nice, and then here you have this sexy looking female fursuit, and then to find out it's a guy playing it was the end of the world for some people. They raised controversies where there needn't be any. They had exaggerated and made boisterous claims. So one of the claims was there was a pet auction. Some people then thought and took that to mean that it was all a big gay sex party, because now that guy is gay and that person's gay, and so now it's just a big gay sex party. But the truth was the pet auction was simply the people would put them up for quote unquote adoption at the auction, and then all the money would be donated to charity. And then whoever won, well, they would just hang out with the person they adopted. It was never intended to be anything more than that. The stories had become twisted and convoluted over the years. If you go on conference right now, you will see the controversy there, because apparently the owner of WikiFur has something about not removing information that's controversial. If anyone says it's controversy, then he's going to keep it up there, even if it was only a few people. But by and large, the vast majority of people who attended the conventions loved them. The controversies are limited to only very few small groups. I did ask him in that conversation we had a week ago. It was his deathbed. I had a Discord call with him on his deathbed. It's been 2 months since I was able to speak with him, and he really wanted to speak with me. And I asked him if there was anything that he wanted me to leave out of making a memorial for him. We will go there after this.
Thank you.
Yes. I asked him if there's anything he wants to leave out, and he said no. I also asked him if there's anything he wanted to say specifically about the fandom, and he said he'll get back with me later on that.
Aww.
It seemed like everything that he wanted to say, he already said it. One of the things that he said, which I found funny, let me go ahead and pull up the exact quote, so I'm not misquoting him. I want to make sure, it's really important that I get this one right. Okay, I know. So this is me talking. I know you and others have shared the view that the adult art puts up a barrier preventing corporate influence, but it builds a wall around us. I want people into anime, into comic books to permeate this wall. I want them to come in not so they can change us, but so they can see and appreciate us in what we do. And his response was, the people who have a problem with the adult stuff, fuck them.
Amen.
That answer.
That's great. Yep.
I get the dad joke. I like
That
how he fit the
sounds
dad
like-
joke in there.
That was great.
I didn't even get that.
sounds
Oh my
like
God.
It makes sense though.
Silas was a very open and accepting
Ah,
individual, and it was kind of absurd and ludicrous. Like when the fandom first started, there were no kids in it. Again, it was people who are professionals working in the industry. You're not going to have a 12-year-old kid in there. Some people would bring their kids to the group, and it was kind of like, okay. But there wasn't that. Well, there wasn't that issue of like, oh, we're sexualizing children or whatever. It was just it was adults doing adult things, and well, if you were a kid, there's already cartoons for you, and you go watch those, and go have fans with those. The the fact that other people had come in after everything Sylys did, and they want to pretend that we're not allowed to do adult stuff anymore, like that was limiting to him. I mean, you saw in the very first letter that was here, it was between him and Wendell Washer talking about the why can't we get more adult stuff in cartoons? Why can't we? He didn't like anyone saying not to do something. He also didn't like. He wanted to bring people together. So this is something that is a little bit less known, but now again, this is just art, right? It's just art. It's just a fantasy. It's not real. There were groups who really liked stories like, BoJack Horseman, so to speak, with humans and animals together in the same story, and it's an adult story, So there were people who liked that kind of stuff. Is again art and fantasy. It is not.
Oh my
It's not. Yeah, it's not actual. It's not real.
Back in those days,
it's
the Bible came first.
art. Now Sylys knew that there would be a huge problem. You can feel it around the room. Everything suddenly got tense. He knew there would be a problem with people meeting up and doing that in a convention. But rather than going out of his way to make sure that those people weren't allowed in the convention, he said they could meet at the local Denny's. And they could have their conversation, anything they want to talk about at a local Denny's.
3 years ago.
He didn't want to say no to anybody. He wanted people to gather, people who loved art, who were fans, whatever they loved. He wanted people to meet and coalesce around that.
Not really free.
The same way that he was able to meet his own family. He wanted everyone to meet theirs. So I think it's important to and Sylys didn't want to either. He made the fandom with the explicit purpose of getting people together who love animal characters. He wasn't going to start turning people away. So the where was I? Yeah, the piece that's missing in the fandom today. Sylys feels a lot more like a proud papa, like a proud father figure of the fandom. He loved everything. He loved everyone. He would talk with me about like there would be certain art of like very realistic animal proportions, but if you look very closely, you'll see the paws are a little bit bigger. The face has a little bit more expressions. The poses that the character is in is not a pose that an animal could ever get in. It's more of a human pose. There's all these little changes, these little differences that make it furry. And he loved that. A lot of his art was actually a little more on the realistic spectrum. So, but he loved everything. This style is not as popular today. Not really. There's more of a traditional furry house style that I've heard it called.
and you'll see that mainly in the very first floor of the museum. And then, as opposed to things like Anubis's piece over there, you don't see that quite as often.
No.
Um,
I will say
Sylys loved it all.
I will say something about Sylys. Once, when my friend was feeling really down and really sort of upset and wanting to do something, Sylys pulled him to one side. When he came back, he was fine. And wow, he does good work.
Sylys had a very good quote. I just have a selection of quotes that I can read off from him that ever comes up. And I think this one is fitting, if you'll let me find it. It was about a humorist that he really loved. And I think I have it. Oh no, that's going to be a little bit tougher to find. So I'll just paraphrase. There was a humorist he loved who was called Will Rogers. He said he wore a cowboy hat and actually warned the country about the dangers of World War II. And he had the quote, "I never met a man I didn't like." Sylys said, the hate and fear are negative emotions. I don't deal with these. And he truly was. If you ever met him, you ever saw him, he was he was full of love, and he was full of joy and light, and there were just so much that he loved in this fandom. But the things he didn't like, you knew. The people who are attacking others in the fandom, people who are destroying the fandom. He's had the convention sabotaged by people like this, who attempted to make a big issue about the fact that there were so many gay people attending. He didn't realize until it was later that was the issue. Because if you go down the list and you look at everything that they were complaining about, well, you start to notice some
from animals
certain things.
and real issues.
That everything there was an adult dancer there who was adult dancing. I don't think I need to explain what that is. Wearing a tail, and that was done to raise charity, actually, for her husband, who I think, shockingly enough, also had cancer. And she did that dance in order to raise money for him. So it was fine. And everyone agreed it was okay. There was no one who was underage at the dance. There was no issue with that. On both sides of the fence, there was not an issue with an adult female dancer at a furry convention. But everyone took issue with him kissing Rod in the hotel lobby.
Wow.
Anything that was straight was fine. If it was adult pinup stuff, if it was a sexy female pinup stuff, if it was like, Hilda the Bambioid right here, it was fine. This is all fine. The thing that was not fine was anything that was gay. And then for some people, the gay part was the problem. But it was limited to a few people, and unfortunately, the few loud voices that screamed the loudest caused the most issues. I can say in this museum, putting together the subculture exhibit, it felt wrong to make an entire museum without mentioning that side of the fandom. It felt like I was deliberately excluding people, and I didn't want to do that. The display was the kind of art that you might come across when you're looking online and you want to turn away and look very quickly. But the main inspiration was actually when I went to MoMA, which was my inspiration for this whole museum, the Museum of Modern Art in New York. The art that I remembered the most was the shock art. It was a bunch of jars, big metal jars up on a shelf, out of reach, and it has words inscribed in it like blood, sweat, puss, all sorts of nasty things, saliva, and then there was another set of jars of someone's hair and toenail clippings. Yeah. And then walking around the corner, and you have to walk through this in order to get out of the room. A straitjacket that was bloodied, laid over a chair, with a cod piece sewn into it. The thing that I remembered the most was the shock art. So I wanted to give people, if I wanted to give people a genuine museum experience, I wanted them to confront things that they otherwise wouldn't have confronted on their own. I wanted to give them something that will stick with them and they'll remember. And so I think the subculture does do that. I know at some point there was discussion like, oh, I could have the like I can show these communities and not have the art be so shocking, but that kind of defeats the purpose. Like I'm not trying to convince people that, oh, this is a community you should totally join. I want to show them, this is also what some furries are into, and we have all these different subcultures and different groups. When I had that display and I finished it and I put it in here, all sorts of different people liked it and didn't like it, and the people who shouted the loudest about the things they didn't like, I asked them which piece they didn't like, and it was a different piece for everyone. There was no consensus. Everyone would say, oh, the other pieces are fine, but that piece in particular is a problem. And then you ask someone else, oh, that piece is fine, but this one is a problem. And then you ask someone else, oh, I don't like this piece or that piece, but this one is bad. So there was no consensus. If I was going to censor this entire museum, I mean, there's tons of every single comment that I heard that someone didn't like something. Half the pieces in here would be blacked out. I don't know what people are going to like or not like, but I do know that for better or for worse, the subculture exhibit did serve its purpose, and we were able to I want to present the real thing. I don't want to present a whitewash version of the fandom. I want to show the real fandom. And you know what? This is a huge part of the real fandom that I can't ignore. So
I think it would be wrong for it to be ignored in general.
I don't want to misrepresent who we are. And this isn't we're not coming in here and drawing art of Blue's Clues, okay? Well, maybe some of us are, but we're coming in like we're adults. A lot of us are adults, and some of us draw adult artwork. Now, Sylys had a very, very good phrase, which I used. I asked him, like, how do I, how do I say that I don't want NSFW art in the museum without making it sound like I don't like NSFW art or I'm trashing it? And he said, artists may draw NSFW artwork. That art will not be displayed here. So that is true of this museum. I do need to be keeping with VRChat's TOS. And I did have that exhibit cleared by the TOS. I think as a result of this museum, there was an even bigger push to have content filtering. So if someone did want to make a museum with a little bit stronger content, they could. But then it would immediately be removed from anyone who was 18 or under. And I made sure all the pieces down there are they're cleared for 18 and under. I mean, if you just watch any cartoon, you will see someone getting swallowed in the mouth by a fox or whatever. Long story short, Sylys did not want to stop people from drawing
avatars in
artwork.
settings.
And He didn't really take kindly to people who diminish that art either, and those artists. I've had a few friends and a few people who have those views, and whenever they've always seemed to be the ones that cause the most
I
problems.
may go watch the show.
Sylys really didn't care for any of that. So
I said that like 30 minutes ago. But
moving on, we've talked about enough, I think, about the early conventions. Later on your own, you can read this. Unless, do you guys want me to read this? This is Sylys's own words about the fandom.
Yes, please.
First...
Yeah, why not?
Yes,
Already
go ahead.
I want to hear
It
it.
is best.
Please.
Okay.
Read
I
it.
like to hear it too.
Alright. Let me zoom in a little more so you guys can see. One more.
We really can't see that.
Furries are people too, by Mark Sylys Merlin. Funny animals have always had a cult following. In comic strips like Pogo, classic comic books published by Gold Key and others, and in animation from Disney to Warner's. In the fandom, APAs like Voodie and Rauerbrassel, various Gen zines, and an active small press gives funny animal fans a form. So you may ask, what's all this about furries? Furries is a catch-all term for anthropomorphic characters, funny animals, that represent an actual living person. This person may be the creator of the character or someone else the creator knows. A person's furry is a personal statement about oneself or a friend. The concept of personal animal personas is not a new one. The most familiar example is the totem of the American Indian. In some tribes, an individual selected an animal as a guiding spirit and teacher. The modern idea is really not that much different. Most people select a favorite animal for their furry. Our attitudes about our animal companions on Earth, their strength, survival ability, agility, beauty, and social structure all contribute to the overall attraction. Animals respond directly to emotion and so seem more honest than we humans. A person's furry can be a great way to communicate. I discovered this several years ago unintentionally. I created a species for a universe I wanted to write about called Skiltear. Basically large sentient weasels. Their natural fearlessness and curiosity make them a great first contact species. Actually, I had no idea just how great. Over a period of almost 20 years, the Skiltear have served as my representatives. Most of my very closest friends met me through their interest in the Skiltear. I had placed my ideas and dreams in my creation, and they had spread the word, as if they really existed. Now I have many more furries. Some are different versions of myself, and others were created for my friends as gifts. Sometimes our furries can communicate when some problem makes it difficult to talk as mere humans. Some people criticize furries as wish fulfillment, or a mask we wear to hide ourselves. My experience leads me to believe the opposite is true. Your furry is the face that lies behind the mask we wear in everyday life. Your furry is a part of you which you wish to share with your closest friends. That confident part of you that can say what you truly feel without fear of embarrassment. I have discussed the furry phenomenon with many people over the years, and the consensus has been that the furries are the most open and friendly fans of any recognized group. By my observation, furries have helped people get together and form lasting relationships. It sure worked for me. Why not try it for yourself? Be a furry and make some friends.
I feel
have
that.
some documents and some information about how conference passed. I'm not so sure. Do you guys want to hear that?
Sylys Sable.
Yes.
I'll hear it.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'd like to hear
Yeah,
it.
we're
Already here,
comfortable
so
with playing
yeah.
on the internet.
You're here for
Yeah.
all of it, man.
So there's a lot. It's difficult to put on a furry convention. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of egos. It's a lot of heads. It's a lot of hassle. And toward the end of it, there were several things that happened. A different convention sprung up and started being in the same place, organized around the same time. So, well, you couldn't have a furry convention, two of them, in the same place, just a month apart. That didn't make sense. And so they had to move conference. And then they lost a lot of people and a lot of their staff in the move. There were a lot of people who were attacking, again, those small groups of people that we keep talking about, were attacking the conventions and wreaking havoc and causing trouble in any way they could.
Excuse me.
The
Sounds like saboteurs.
One example is so this was a rather concerning this was an email that was sent to James Otto, who was, I believe, the vice president of the convention or the hotel that they were attending.
Oh boy.
James Otto, the vice president of marketing for Atlas Hotels, sent Mark Molino this fax, and he said, per our conversation today, please find an enclosed copy of regulations published by the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control concerning conduct and actions which are not permitted on a licensed premise. Specifically, these regulations are 143.2, attire and conduct, and 143.3, entertainers and conduct, and 143.4, visual displays. The town and country resort hotel holds a liquor license, and as a licensee will enforce these regulations. To the extent that any of your activities or the conduct of your attendees violate these regulations as determined by the hotel, such activities or conduct will not be permitted. Please call me if you have any questions concerning this issue or regarding any other issue about your meeting. Very truly yours, James Otto. There was adult art being sold in the art show, which suddenly had to be moved out. But if you read, this is basically some blue laws from California trying to limit kind of gentlemanly clubs, and they didn't want people drinking and being around that at the same time. But the laws were outdated. The hotel was selling copies of Playboy, so they were in violation of the very same rules that they wanted to claim that furries were in violation of. And the police were actually called. Is
this where the conflict between normies and furries began?
Well, this was actually what it turned out. The person who sent that first email was actually one of the mothers of the volunteers who volunteered for conference. Sylys didn't tell me the name of the person, but he did tell me that the person who volunteered is no longer speaking with them. They also lost their spouse, so yeah, basically someone who's crazy, and it's not good. Also, just rule of thumb, it's not good to just suddenly up and leave all your friends and leave the fandom. That's not a cool thing to do. To employ or use any person in the sale or service of alcoholic beverages in or upon the licensed premises, while such person is in unclothed or in such attire, costume, or clothing as to expose to view any portion of the female breast below, and then there's more details on that. It goes down into, like, you can't even have displays of any adult works or anything. So what they ended up doing was and keep in mind, the hotel sells Playboy, right? So that's okay. All of the adult art that was going to be in the auction had to be sold in private rooms. Any adult art that was going to be sold in what would have been a dealer's den or the artist alley had to be sold privately in the hotel rooms. And they had showings in private rooms, and this disrupted quite a few events that were going on out of fear, not out of any necessity to prevent anything unsavory from happening. The police were called regardless. They came, they asked to see some of the adult artwork, they saw it, they just laughed, and then they went to James Otto, and then I'm pretty sure it was James Otto. Thank you very much. And just started kind of getting mad at someone in the hotel. We're assuming they got mad at James Otto, who may have called them or contacted them, or someone who worked in the hotel.
That is messed up.
To say like they shouldn't be called for stuff like that.
I know some cops, and I bet they would have a laugh.
So obviously I don't think these laws are still in effect. Yes.
So in discussion of laws, I think everyone should keep in mind that there are still states that have laws like this on the books, and there are still places that will enforce the laws. Washington State, even though it has a huge and vibrant furry community that's settled in Seattle, for example, Washington has been going around and has been going after people just because a person had an exposed nipple, not even a woman, a man with an exposed nipple in an establishment where they're serving alcohol, and the law technically says that's not allowed.
That's really messed up.
Wow. Imagine if they came to Florida.
So,
we have like beaches.
Wow, it's right.
By the... So yeah, long story short, he had to deal with all of that nonsense from all of those people, and then having to move the convention so many hours away, and then Rod said he can't do it anymore, and Sylys said, "Well, if you're going, I'm going." So it became clear that they couldn't keep doing everything. The attendance dropped from 1,200 at its peak with Conference 9. I think it dropped to around 800 or 900 around Conference 10. And then it changed hands. I think they lost a little bit more. I saw the attendance numbers on Wikifor. It was lower. I'm not entirely sure which. Regardless, if you look at the attendance for conference, you see it's actually in a tentpole. The highest convention attendance was Conference 9, 1,200 attendees. Quite a big jump from the initial 60. And then a slow fall off until it eventually ended. The convention changed hands to Daryl. Daryl then said, "All right, I own conference now. No one else can make conference." Conference was then no more. He asked Sylys, "Where's the money?" "All right, where's the money?" And Sylys said, "What money? We have no money. Everything that they raised, they spent it on the convention," which may lead into, maybe it wasn't the best run convention, but it wasn't run for profit.
Oh,
It
yikes.
was only run to put the event going, and they didn't really make their money. They didn't make any money from doing the conventions. They spent money on the conventions. They spent their own life savings and their own earnings to keep the convention going whenever they needed to. So yeah, it was hard to run a convention. Even with all the help in the world, even if you have the best help in the world, it's a lot of work. And after doing it 11 times, it was too much for him to keep doing it.
Was it common to raise conventions for nonprofit like that back then?
I mean, who's gonna run a furry convention for profit?
What money is there to be made? There's no corporate sponsors.
Okay,
Exactly.
Here's just, if you guys don't know how these things work, hotels start you off with a low price to book some rooms for a small event and small convention. The more people attend, the higher the price goes.
Some attention.
So the price of furry conventions is only going to keep getting more expensive as the conventions themselves get bigger and more people attend. You would hope that, more people means more people are paying, and then the money can come down. No, the hotel is making the money. The people throwing the convention don't make anything. I did hear from Megaplex, I know Pup and KP. I asked them what are some things that we don't know is difficult to run a convention that you guys had to deal with. And they mentioned, how much do you think the ice cream social cost? This was just a little event where we can go and you can get like a little, popsicle, ice cream, whatever, make a little plate with some cookies and eat some things. It cost $50,000.
Wow.
Jesus.
It cost 1/5
Damn.
of all the revenue that the convention made. You think of how much they're charging $100 for a ticket. There's people who spend $1,000 to be like a major sponsor, and all the money that they raise, a lot of the money goes to charity, and then a lot of money just goes to the ice cream social, 20% of it. So people really don't, and this is not for hundreds of thousands of people. This is only for a few thousand people attending a furry convention. So the cost gets distributed, and the costs go up the more people want. They even said it would be so much cheaper to run a furry convention if no one had to rent any projectors or have any microphones or speakers. But the conventions are getting so big now that people in the back of the room can't hear you unless you have a microphone and speaker. So the hotel charges for that. And it's very difficult to put a furry convention on. People don't understand just how much work is involved, just how much money is involved. Like if anyone's making money, it's not the event organizers, it's the hotel making money. And they do that though, and all those volunteers do that so that we can meet up, and so that people in fursuits can meet up and take pictures, and you can meet your friends in person and have an awesome time, an awesome weekend. They don't do that just for the sake of doing that, and they don't do it just for profit. They do it for you guys. So I hope, if anything else, please do appreciate the people in your community who are organizing these events. We still are going to be going to Sylys's memorial, a special world that I made for that. That has been, I've locked everything else in the world off, but I'll explain that in a little bit. Now, I had a talk with Chenga Husky, and he said, the kind of person that Sylys was, you still see that in people like Dalton. And if you guys don't know, Dalton is the creator of Virality, the chairperson for Virality. They're in our community and event organizers. They're in our artists and the people who love and share art. If you ever gone into a world and seen a movie and some furry is showing you a movie that they love, that's Sylys right there. And if you ever saw someone that was making NSFW art, that's Sylys too. If you saw someone who loves anime, that's Sylys too.
I can
And
have
if you
people
see
who
someone
seem
who's a
like
gray
anime.
muzzle, if you see someone who's 70 years old or older, that's Sylys. There's a piece of Sylys in every single one of us. So I think what I want to take away from all this, with everything that he did in his life, even though he himself is no longer here, I hope that his spirit, his legend, can live on.
Yeah!
Seriously.
Sure.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could clap, I would.
2 hours.
Be banging my controllers
2
together.
I could go for longer,
Love you, buddy.
but I don't think people here have the attention span.
Yeah, come on and
Honestly,
join.
main problem with
Hey,
That was
everyone.
rude.
Everyone in here.
Yes, we will.
Look to my left. And look at that name.
Hello.
Rodney is here with us in this room. He's right beside me. This is Mark. This is Mark Bellino's.
I can't hear anybody because I
partner.
have my safety settings on.
This is him. This is Rodney.
Hi, Rod.
Hello.
Hello, Rod.
Hello.
My condolences.
Hey, Rod.
We are very sorry.
Condolences.
Right.
The fandom.
I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But guess what? It's this guy's
Oh,
moment,
okay.
so I'm going to listen to him.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Rod.
Let's
I
hear it.
wish you were
Let's hear
here
it.
for the history presentation. Thank you so much for coming.
No problem. It's all right.
I don't want to put
Given
too
that
much
people are
attention.
screaming,
I don't want to put too
given
much
that
attention on
people
you,
are screaming,
but yeah, we're going to. Yeah, people are streaming, and I'm just gonna show right now a little bit of our history with Sylys in the museum, and then we're gonna move to the.
I just wanted to be where you folks. I just wanted to be where you folks are. So I'm cool. Go ahead, please continue.
So yeah, Sylys. After Sylys gave such an impassioned speech about history and the importance of history in historical art, he actually told me, you know, just because I talked a lot about history doesn't mean I want you to put me in the museum. He just wanted to see other historical art, but the person I had in front of me, and this is kind of true for a lot of different exhibits in the museum, I take what I can get and I work with it. I struggled very hard to find African American furries, for instance, for the Furs of Color display, but I had a friend, Shy Matzi, who gladly volunteered to be in the display. So, Shy, hello, Shy.
Hello.
And then if there were people that I had knew or met in person, I would reach out to them if I had trouble getting people, and they gladly accepted to be included in the project. But of course, it was usually a one-way process. With Sylys, I just thought it was so incredible that like I had the person who made the fandom in front of me. Obviously, I want to focus on that. I'm not gonna just. I could have just thrown some old pieces of furry art somewhere, and maybe that would have made him happy. But what Sylys offered was the chance to get it right, to get the history of our fandom to do it justice. So that anyone who comes to this museum, and people do come in this museum, by the way, who aren't furries. I don't know if many of you noticed or realized, but Tupper was in here tonight. The VR chat community organizer. Well, the community for VR chats.
That's awesome.
Just to give you an idea, if any of you don't know who Tupper is, I asked Tupper, so can we get like an official response from VR chat regarding this? And he said, "Oh, sure, I can write you a letter." That is, that's Tupper.
That's amazing.
That's pretty awesome of him to do that.
Yeah, that's one swell guy.
People are coming in here who aren't furries, and they're finding out who we are. They're not just coming to any place. they're going to learn our history, and they're going to learn that their history and our history are actually very closely entwined as well. The anime people and furries coming together. It would be very easy for me to just sit up here and talk about furries, but Sylys did love anime. He loved anime, I think, more than any of us would care to watch anime. He loved it. So in honor of him, I think it's important to mention that. But anyways, he really wanted to advertise the museum, and he told me I should try and promote the museum. And I said, oh, I'll just put it up there, and then people see it. And he's like, how will people know about it? If that's all you do. So every single interview that I ever had, it was the impetus of Sylys and me to go and promote it, and it was literally his asking me to go and promote it. He took all these pictures inside the museum. I still remember there were some issues in the world; it was still work in progress, and he was upset that he couldn't take those pictures. But he got all those pictures, printed them out, pasted them on a poster board, and he even asked for the brochures. And I said, "Oh yeah, I can get you like a special brochure that you can print as a PDF." And he printed those and put them on the display table in further confusion. This guy right here is Tab Fox, one of my friends. The person who took this photo is Quiche Foxbat, also one of my friends in VR chat. And I have a picture of both of them in VR chat looking at a picture that they took.
That is awesome.
Now,
Reality wonderful.
This is January 13th. The museum wouldn't go public until
VR-ception.
April 2nd. So it would take several months before the museum was actually open to the public officially. This is Sylys did this. I didn't even ask him to do this. He just did it. He wanted to do it, and bring people here. And I mentioned before, and I'll mention it again for anyone who's new. Sylys said that there's two great places to learn about the history of the fandom. Ash Coyote's The Fandom documentary and this museum.
Yeah,
Someone
I
who had
agree with
researched
that.
Thank you. Someone who had researched furry history for an entire month and was struggling with it, came in this museum, and in 30 minutes I gave a little history presentation, and he said he learned more about furry history, and he learned it more clearly in 30 minutes in this museum than he had on his own in a month. So that's kind of the power of the museum. But of course it
It's
takes
like
a
if
long
I-
time to make these displays.
So if I didn't meet Sylys, I wouldn't have met you, so there.
So
Yeah, I don't think I would have either. I met Cyphers too.
Oh.
Me either.
Sai did connect me to so many people, and he connected so many people.
Oh, yes.
Of course, all of us were connected.
Yeah, since if he
And
was
you know, it wasn't
there doing this stuff, we probably wouldn't have VR chats in the first place.
Exactly.
Well, of course.
That is very
Well,
true.
I mean,
True.
That's a good valid
They
point.
definitely wouldn't be furry
We can
central,
also
that's for
thank
sure.
Saros Eclipse for that.
You can
For
thank
creating
Peter
habitat
for that.
Well, and also Saros Eclipse, because he created the first MMO that had furry characters. It was really the first MMO. But yes.
So, I know a lot of people have comments, but I'm
wondering why
like,
he's
it
not
would be
here.
Let's
difficult
carry
to
on.
get through the history
Oh,
of so many
God,
comments.
he's waving his hand, Solo.
Please try to
these
limit it
folks.
to very, 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 very short. Otherwise, we'll be here all night, and my headset will crash, and it will be
Yeah.
a lot of problems. Now, he had directed a lot of people here. The history. Oh yeah, just because it only takes so long to go through the exhibit doesn't mean that's how long it takes to make it. Adding that one exhibit to the museum added a whole month to the project in order to get the art, choose the artwork, find the stories, talk with Sylys himself to figure out what was going on, and research and learn more information. I watched the documentary as well, and there's a lot of work that goes into these things, a lot of things that people don't know. Rather than focusing on what I did, let's keep the attention on Sylys here. We had gone through hundreds of hours of conversations of him telling me about the fandom, and he would be in VR. People say it's. I'm not entirely sure what to say about that. The fact that he's no longer with us. We lost a lot of different people in him. We lost. He was the greatest resource. He was the greatest keeper. He's the keeper of the fandom, and we lost our keeper. But maybe I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. The history of the museum. Okay. So Sylys did that.
You're good.
And then after that, if we'll move over here, the museum opened. And this is a picture of Sylys. Rodney. Hi, Rodney! Hello!
Hi.
Rodney.
Shifty. Hi.
And myself. And if you can see
Yeah,
very clearly,
Chandler.
I was in a blue Durga doll at that time. I didn't have my Tyler. I postponed making this guy so I can make the museum. But then that means all the pictures of me in the museum were not of Tyler. And then, of course, you have Sylys Sable in the middle. Changa Husky scanned all the documents. Together, Sylys and Rodney co-directed the very first conference. Rodney, would you like to come up here and talk a little bit about yourself and what you did?
Oh, good grief. No.
Every time
For the
No?
simple
Okay.
fact let me explain. This is you and the museum. I really don't want to steal the spotlight right now. I'll have plenty of opportunity to do that. I've been warning. I will say this. I've been warning everybody. I am not in any way, shape, nor form the sort who deals with grief by sitting in a dark room and composing poetry. That's not me, okay? I am a social butterfly. So I am going to be out and about a lot. I will be more than happy to talk to each and every one of you. Lots.
Well,
okay? But right now, this is Sotolo's moment. I'm here to witness this. And I'm happy to be here with all of you for this. So, Sotolo, keep at it.
Yes, sir.
I'm right here.
Yeah, he's over there.
So, okay. And there will be a social. We'll consider it the social hour going.
So where's Chinga?
The memorial. That'll be a place where you can go and you can go freely and talk and socialize. When the museum opened, that was a pretty big day. There were a lot of people here. A lot of very famous and interesting furries came in here. I remembered. Is Tao still here?
He's still
Tao
here.
Believe so.
With
He's somewhere.
He's way over there. Now, I can't remember if it was Sylys who told me that Tao had the idea of making a furry museum. And he wanted to do it, but he never did.
I can. Do you want me to
never
go
got
grab
around
them?
to it. No, it's okay. No need to pull him from the conversation he's having. The point is that there were a lot of people who came in who were fascinated. Okay. When the museum was released, a lot of people came in. A lot of different furry groups. A lot of those groups were connected to Sylys. Back when right before this happened, in private instances that Sylys would join, I noticed the groups got massive to 20, 30 people over and over again. Every single time Sylys came in, he was inviting all his friends. And it was always a party, a night at the museum. And the world wasn't even open yet. At one point, I told him, I'm just here to test something. I'm just looking for something. I just... and there would be a party going on.
I remember those nights.
And then the
I actually
flood
remember
would
those
happen.
nights when you were before it opened, and we were all like, because we were all so excited. We were all so excited to see this place. You know,
VR development is really not...
I thought it was one of the coolest things ever. Like that, there was this first that you started this, and I'm so happy that you did.
So, I just want to, so that
We
people
all
are
are.
aware, I'm not trying to, and I heard this comment before I was trying to gatekeep the museum. No, I'm not trying to gatekeep the museum. The museum is public. It's open. Anyone can come in. And I'm continuing to work on a new floor right now that is not public yet, but the reason for that is things are broken. The information might not all be right. Things are in a very incomplete, unfinished state, and I also don't have all the permissions I need. So I need to talk with people. I need to make sure all those things are cleaned up. Things that are written aren't written one time, they're written 10 times. The world we're about to go in has not really had that level of polish yet. I only had a week to work on it, and it's already gone through a few iterations. So to kind of quell the rumors and the notions of why is there a new version of the museum that I'm not seeing yet right this moment, well, it's not ready. And I promise when it is ready, it will be released publicly. But we'll be heading there in a moment.
It's like there's one picture I have up there. Is that one?
The last two pictures. Well, no, there's two pictures here. There's the Fun Day Puppet Show, and then Megaplex.
Yes.
So the Fun Day Papa Show, I was in the group. I was surprised to see that there was an entire group of furries in Florida. I didn't think that was a thing that happened. I didn't know that there was furries in Florida. That doesn't make sense. But it turns out a lot of those people are connected to the Fun Day.
Hey, you got one right there. Got one right there.
We're everywhere.
Jeffrey's one.
And I had joined the community. I hadn't really gotten that involved, but then a lot of my friends came from that community, and I started hanging out with them. And then they were kind of surprised, like, "Oh, you made the museum!" And they were really, really excited and wanted to have me on the show. So I agreed to do the show, and I remember there was a lot of talk about what kind of a show it would be. And I said, well, what kind of show is it to have it in, the lounge and not go to the museum? So it's something that they hadn't really done. Usually people stay in their little chaos lounge and they have the events and games and the show runs in there. For the very first time,
they set it on fire.
They went on a field trip and took a field trip here. And Sylys who's standing right there, was part of this group. Well, rather, he was in the room when it happened.
He loved it.
The room where the room
He-
where
he-
it happened.
Solo, he was literally saying after that day, to me, a few days after, that he loved the community that came here on that day and how it made him happy and proud to see so many people enjoying what he made. That's what he loved. He loved seeing people enjoying what he made and hearing stories about how the fandom saved people's lives. That's what took him back most, is when somebody says, you saved my life with this.
So, yes. Now, I'm still going on about this. Sylys, after that, they had organized an entire show for Sylys. And I heard from recently. I heard from Mutt that show they did with Sylys they absolutely loved. They loved having him on the show, and the people in the Puppet Show also loved him being there. They wanted to do one final show with him, and they were like, please, let's have a show with Sylys. And I was like, I don't think he's in a good condition to do it, but I'll let him know. And then I passed it on to Changa, but of course that show didn't happen. Toward the end of his life, Sylys was not. I mean, if any of you know cancer, it's not great.
Right.
But yeah, so Sylys and I both had our own episodes. I think 2 episodes apart. At the Sunday Puppet Show. So we're both connected in that way. And then, of course, we come to this. This picture right here is the panel presentation I gave at Megaplex 2023 last year on the making of this museum.
Wait, that's you in the middle, is it?
That's me in the middle. Yeah, that's me. This was the first time that Sylys had came to a furry convention in Florida. He didn't feel very comfortable. It took a while for me to convince him to come and check Florida out. I have a feeling our experience on the Puppet Show also convinced him, but also hanging out with my friends and seeing me, it warmed him up to the idea. It was a very big trip for him, and he was getting a little up there in age. And it was getting harder to travel. He told me it's probably going to be the last time that he could ever go and travel like this and visit Walt Disney World. And I have the pleasure of taking Sylys to Disney World for the very last time.
Yeah, man.
And what a trip it was. For those of you who don't know, I have type 1 diabetes, which means I'm not able to sit and wait in lines for very long. I was able to get us the Disability Access Service, which means we still had to wait, but we didn't have to wait in the line. So we were queuing one ride after the other, and we were going to rides. We were taking breaks in between. We were running around the park. I was getting quite a lot of exercise in. He did too. I'm surprised that didn't extend his life, the amount of walking that we did. And we joined the resistance and we fought Kylo Ren.
Hell yeah.
We went to Hollywood Studios, Mickey's Railway Speedway. We did that. We went to Epcot. I mean, there's just so many things that we did, and I enjoyed the trip so much. And something I hadn't mentioned before, it's kind of crazy that we talk so much about Sylys without mentioning this. He never thought that he was a very good artist. Which, it always killed me. It killed me in my heart.
He was a good artist.
Oh, yeah.
Now, again, coming back to, the pieces I chose for the museum, I wanted to focus on things that were historically significant for the history table. And I had inadvertently not put any of the art that he personally made. Because I didn't feel like that art that he was sending me was historically significant enough. perhaps that was not the anything I say right now is going to make me sound like a real jerk. But I included the skill tear, but it turns out those drawings weren't drawn by him. The ones that was in the